everybody, welcome to the first episode of my screenwriting series, where I'll be going all the way through the process of screenwriting, starting with conceptualization and going all the way through to a finished screenplay. So, episode 1 is conceptualization. Let's get into it. Before we begin, I'd like to preface that I'm not a professional screenwriter. This is my second script I'm working on for Ataka right now. I think I've gleaned some very helpful tips for you guys, but at the same time, I am not trying to claim that I know more than people who have been in the business for 30 years. Those guys are the pros, but I'm here to give you some tips that hopefully can relate to you early on in the filmmaking journey, and hopefully they can be really helpful to you. But I just wanted to preface by saying I'm not trying to claim that I'm as good as the professionals or the people who have written classics. So, I just wanted to preface with that. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's get into how to conceptualize your ideas for your film. Let's go. One of the things I always like to start with is writing brainstorming documents, and generally I just go into Google Docs or Microsoft Word and just start typing ideas I have. Maybe they're visual ideas in my head, maybe they're just random ideas that I've thought of. They don't even have to be coherent with each other. Just typing them down and getting them out there and just having them written is really, really helpful, because then I can reference them later, I can go back to them, and I can just develop my ideas in a place where it's not just in my headspace, it's written down. So I recommend writing down your ideas in a brainstorming document, sort of like this. Just sort of a very basic document that doesn't have a lot of structure, but it can be really, really helpful for you when you don't really have an idea apart from maybe a very basic concept. And from here, you can develop more ideas in the future. Following along with brainstorming, it's really, really good for you to have conversations with people you trust. Maybe someone who's been in the screenwriting industry, or even is very interested in film and knows a lot about it. Someone who you can trust to give you good advice on screenwriting or even film in general. Maybe just an outside source saying, maybe this isn't working, this may not be a great idea. But I know for a lot of you, you might not have someone who's involved in film or knows a lot about that. For me, that's my dad, but for a lot of you, I know you don't have that. So another thing that you can do if you don't have someone else is to do it yourself. What I like to do is I like to get on an iPad voice memo and just talk for like 30, 45 minutes, an hour, and just get into my thought process and talk it out. You could almost question some things. Like I remember when I was working on some Ataka stuff, I would be asking myself questions on the voice memos for some of the things. In early brainstorming, you don't have to question everything too much, but definitely having someone to facilitate your ideas, even if that's yourself, is so helpful for honing in your ideas and making sure everything's solid. In terms of making things solid, it's very important that probably from a fairly early on stage, you know what sort of genre you're going for. That's not to say you can't not know the genre you're going for, but it is really helpful to hone on what's the basic thing you're going for. Like, you might have a concept for a film, but maybe hone in on what that would be. So if, for instance, with Remnants, knowing that that's, it's going to be action and it's going to be a comedy, maybe that's not the most important thing. But knowing the basis to the story, even if it's not a genre, but just knowing the very basis of it, and that can evolve too. You can have a very specific idea that you want the entire story to revolve around. And as you move forward, you'll find out that that's not really where you want to go. But because you went through the brainstorming process and figured out the basic idea that you can work from, it's really, really helpful. Even if that changes later, it's very important to have a little bit of like, what is this? When going into that early brainstorming period. Now, in brainstorming, you're not trying to limit yourself to one thing per se. Basically, what I've done, and it's a really, really good piece of advice, which I've gotten from other people, is follow what you find is cool. If you're not following what you find cool, what excites you, what makes your heart pump, you might not be on the right path. Just keep trying to find things that make you really excited. Things, even if it's just a little visual idea, or a scene, or a way you're lighting something that could be really cool. All of those things can drive home little ideas that can really help you later on. So just follow what you find is cool. If you think this model of car is cool, just write it down, brainstorm it, put it down, and follow what you find is cool, especially in the early brainstorming stages. Following what's cool is really vital to making your story something that excites you and hopefully will excite the audience. Another thing I've learned is don't try to keep yourself in a box when you're starting to brainstorm. It's really, like, I think for Ataka, when I was starting to write that, I had a totally different idea of what it would be than what it is now. So don't try to box yourself in and say, well, it has to be this way. I've already written some brainstorming things. It has to be the way I've already written it. It's brainstorming. It should be, just don't be afraid to have totally outlandish ideas that will never make it into the story. Even if your idea is totally outside of the box and it's not something you want to do, but you find it interesting, put it down. Don't put yourself in a creative box when you're in the first few months or first few weeks of creating ideas. This is a creative playground, so to speak. So don't box yourself in with, it has to be this way, probably until outlining, at least to some degree. Make sure to keep yourself open to ideas in this stage. That's really important. Sometimes you can even have an idea that doesn't work for the project you're thinking of, but it could totally spark an idea for a project down the line. So don't worry about it, just write it down. No harm in that. Just do it and it should work out well. Another tip is to watch movies. Watch movies. It sounds simple. Why would I not watch movies? I watch movies all the time. But watch movies that are maybe specific to your genre. Movies that just have an idea that you think could be helpful to your story. Even ones you haven't seen. Like if I'm making a rom-com, then look up the best rom-coms of all time. Look up the best rom-coms of all time and watch them. The idea is to watch a lot of movies. It adds to your Rolodex of creative ideas that you can think of. People who know more than you, have been in the game for longer, learn from them by watching those movies, and get ideas from their movies as well. Finding movies that are specific to what you're looking for, seeing how they did it, can help you spark ideas for how you want to do something, even if it's totally different from how the movie does it. I'm not advocating copying for movies. I'm just saying watching a lot of movies is incredibly helpful in your screenwriting journey. Even just as a filmmaker, watching a lot of films, having a lot of experience in watching a lot of different movies is just a really good thing to have in general. Watch movies. And one thing from that is after you've watched the movies, especially if they're movies that are directly applying to what you're writing, make a voice memo or record yourself on video talking about that movie, what you learned from it, what you can take away from it once it's fresh in your mind, when you just watched it. Think about what you can learn from it, what you can take from it, what you found really cool, what you found really exciting. Make sure to not just watch it and then forget about it a little while later. Take some notes down from, even just write down what you thought was very interesting from it. It's a really, really good idea to make sure not to just watch the movies and let them die away in your mind. Some of them are fine to do that. Some things I've had where I watch a movie and I'm like, I didn't really find anything important from that. And then a few months later I think of it and it's really good. But putting those ideas down on writing or on voice recording or on video, just putting yourself in front of a camera or whatever, it's really good because it can make sure that you are not forgetting what you learned from those movies, because you're investing time into watching those movies. So don't waste it. Make sure to put those ideas down. Yeah, that's basically it. And now harkening back to the brainstorming. So I'm thinking at this point, maybe you're a couple weeks, a couple months down the line in terms of conceptualizing some ideas for your project. Go back to those original recordings, those voice recordings, even writing, brainstorming, when you write things in brainstorming sessions, go back to them. Because often you created new ideas and you went totally away from where that is. But you find an idea that didn't work before, but now works. Or just something that sparks an idea that you wouldn't have had before. Review your older brainstorming. It can really, really help you almost in any stage of the screenwriting process. Go back to the original roots or earlier things, and that can really help propel where you are now forward and make what you have now even better. It can really spark great ideas, and so that's what I recommend for you to do. Finally, and this is one of the most important things when you're brainstorming, when you're conceptualizing your film, don't just stop. Don't become dormant. Don't not touch the brainstorming for months. Often, I've hit creative roadblocks that I feel like there's not a point to writing because I'm not really getting anywhere. Don't get in that mindset. That mindset can be incredibly destructive. It can ruin the creativity. It can make you feel like this project isn't going anywhere. The project isn't going anywhere. So never stop. That's not to say you can't take a break or anything. But don't stop creating ideas. It can be something super mundane, like how the flowers look, or how the sky could look, or how this one car moves, or a location, or something. Don't let yourself become creatively dormant and stop working on it altogether. There are some parts in the creative process, like after you're outlining or after you write draft 1 of your screenplay, where you should step away and get some time. But in conceptualization, letting that fire die can be one of the worst things for your project. So there are times where you'll need to step away, but for the most part, don't become dormant in your creativity when you're brainstorming. Just write things, even if they'll never make it into the movie, even if they're super mundane or boring. Just write them down, and I promise you, it'll fuel something better that will exponentially improve your creativity. That wraps it up for episode 1 of my screenwriting series. I hope you guys took something away from this for conceptualizing your film, your short film, all that sort of thing. I want to thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in 2 weeks for episode 2, world building, where we'll go deeper into conceptualization in a more deep and full way. This is where you're going to let your creativity run wild, and it's going to be really exciting. So jump back with me on June 4th for that episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.